intellectually, but also experientially. It's not enough to have an intellectual understanding. Knowledge without experience is kind of sometimes confusing. If you have a lot of things you know about but you haven't experienced them, then that gets confusing. And also the other way around, if you have experience but you can't understand what the experience is, then sometimes you think you're going crazy because everybody else is, who we think is normal, is actually crazy. It's very important to understand that your body is a process, it's not a thing. Okay, in fact, I told you yesterday that there's no such thing as a thing. There are no nouns in the universe, only verbs. Okay, your thought is an activity, emotions are an activity. By activity means they come and then they disappear. Okay, your thoughts are an activity, your emotions are an activity, and perception is an activity. You know, what you're perceiving right now, you won't be perceiving in the next minute. Okay, not exactly the same thing. And then, of course, when you walk out of here, it'll be something different. So thought is an activity, emotions are an activity, perceptions are an activity. And our body is a perceptual experience. You don't have the same body today that you had when you were a baby or a teenager, or that you even had a year ago. 98% of all the atoms in your body that were there a year ago aren't there today. Okay? So people identify with their body, but it's an experience, just like a thought is an experience. What we see, what we perceive, what we hear, what we think, what we imagine, what we understand, what inspires us, all of that comes from belief. And then these beliefs project as our world. We actually create the world that comes from these inner beliefs. In turn, the world feedbacks on us. The world feeds back on us and it reinforces what we already believe in. So we see what we become and the world becomes who we are. When you start that reflective self-inquiry, ask yourself, who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? What am I grateful for? Go into the stillness of meditation, you have what wisdom traditions have called revelation. Who am I is the most fundamental question of our existence. And from there are other questions that follow. What do I want is another important question. We go about trying to get things, and after we've obtained our goals, sometimes we realize that's not really what I want. What do I truly want is a very important question. A third question, which is also very important, is what is my purpose? What am I doing here? Doing here meaning not the Chopra Center, but doing with my life. What is the purpose of my life? And then another question which to me is very important and for many reasons is what am I grateful for? Because gratitude is a question. When we ask that question, it opens the door to our spirit, to our soul. Your body is a process, and you cannot identify with an experience because no experience lasts even a microsecond. When I came on the stage, that's gone, right? A minute ago is gone. A second ago is gone. By the time you hear my sentence, the beginning of my sentence is gone. So this is what the rishis call the mistake of the intellect. That the intellect makes a mistake. It confuses reality with the experience in reality. Reality is eternal, timeless. But the experience in reality, actually you can't catch it. You can't catch the past, you can't catch the future, and you can't even catch the present. Because as soon as the present occurs as an experience, it's over.
So this is what has happened. This pandemic is pointing out to us that our humanity is incomplete because we are not even surprised or grateful that we exist, and we have no idea why we exist or why there is awareness of existence. Because if there was no awareness of existence, then for all practical purposes, there's no existence. This is the great mystery. Now, in our Indian tradition, the tradition of, Sanatana Dharam, or, the schools of thought that come from the great sages or Tagore or Shanti Niketan, they say that human suffering occurs only because of 5 things. Only because of 5 things. In Sanskrit, they are called the kleshas. Number 1, we are asleep to our true identity. We are asleep. We have no idea of our own creativity. We are just recycling everybody else's ego reactive responses. So number 1. Second, we are clinging to a dream because every experience is a dream. If I said what happened to you 5 minutes ago, that's a dream right now. So you're clinging to an evanescent, ephemeral, transient, ungraspable dream. The third cause of human suffering is you're recoiling from the nightmare which the dream frequently becomes, as when there's a pandemic, there's a war, there's terrorism, there's eco-destruction, there's climate change. Now we're recoiling from this dream is becoming a nightmare. The fourth is you're identifying with the provisional identity, which is your current body-mind, not your body-mind from 10 years ago, not your body-mind 10 years from now. So you're identifying, you have a screwed up identity. It's called the ego. And the last cause of human suffering is the fear of death. So these are the 5 kleshas, and the only solution is to wake up to your true identity, which is unlimited, immeasurable potential for creativity, for maximum diversity of expression, for higher consciousness, for your capacity to create a better world. All those, which we call dharma, is part of waking up.
Everybody's heard of these, I presume. And what one of my colleagues at that time, named a woman by the name of Candice Pert, who later on, she was a fellow, research fellow we were all kind of hanging out together. She later went and became the chief of neurochemistry at the National Institutes of Health, and she coined an expression which became relatively popular amongst us, molecules of emotion. So what her basic thesis was that emotional experiences generate molecules, and these molecules are neuropeptides because they're found in the brain, and peptides because they're protein molecules. And that when you feel different emotions, you have different body chemistry. Now that was very interesting to those of us who were interested in consciousness. And so we started looking everywhere in the body for receptors to these molecules. So, the first place obvious to look for was immune cells. Immune cells which go by different names, T cells, B cells, macrophages, etc. If you look at the receptor sites of these little cells, they have receptors to the molecules of emotion. So right now, somebody inside you is having a conversation with themselves, and this is a very interesting conversation because it has emotional overtones, whether you agree with me, disagree with me, whether I fit into your ideology about what is right, wrong, etc. The conversation never shuts up. It is happening right now. It's happening even in your sleep, in your dreams. In a moment, we're going to try and figure out who's this person who never shuts up. But the fact is that the cells of your immune system are responding to this conversation. They're eavesdropping. They're listening to this conversation. The question that was asked was, how do we maximize the use of our time? Here's my answer, and I learned this from Dr. Daniel Siegel, a UCLA psychotherapist. He says, divide the time in 24 hours into the following sections. So sleep time, meditation time,
exercise time, relationship time, downtime, creative and play time, focused work time, and when you eat. And when you're doing each of these things, then just do those things. Don't do anything else. I thought that was very brilliant, and I've been doing this now for a number of years. I sleep at least 6 to 8 hours a day. I meditate early in the morning for about 1.5 hours. I go to the gym after that. I walk between 5 to 10 miles a day. I work from about 9 o'clock to 12 noon. Then I take a full hour for a mindful lunch. I take a 20-minute walk after lunch. Then I start working again in the afternoon around 1 o'clock or so, 1:30, 2 even. And then I do a short meditation at 4:30 in the evening, 5 o'clock, and I have an early supper around 6, and I'm in bed by about 10. Now when I'm doing this daily routine, then I feel that my rhythms are in order. They're connected to the rhythms of the cosmos. And when I'm speaking to someone, I'm present with them. I don't check my iPhone or my handheld device at the same time, because the cortical brain can only do one thing at a time. So, of course, the autonomic nervous system can do many things at a time. Do one thing, do it mindfully, and do it well. Pursue excellence and ignore success. Stay detached and divide your time into those quadrants.
People get so scared that they have a bad trip. Some people cross that threshold and discover nirvana or enlightenment, and they say, wow, I thought I was squeezed into the volume of a body in the span of a lifetime, but I'm a timeless being that can morph myself into any experience, including the human experience, which is amazing. But the human experience is also that which causes existential depression. Our life is a dream. We are asleep. But once in a while, we wake up enough to know that we're dreaming. So what do we wake up to? We wake up to reality. And what is reality? It's the consciousness that is dreaming. It's projecting the dream. Now, last night you all had dreams, and most of you don't even remember them, right? They're gone. So too, this is a dream, and how many people remember what happened when they were between 8 and 9, or between 5 and 6, or how many people remember when they learned to speak the English language or any language? But you did. So just because you don't remember doesn't mean that it didn't happen, okay? Now there are people who remember other lifetimes, but if you ask them what they had on Tuesday for lunch, they won't be able to tell you. And why is that? Because we only remember things that we pay attention to or give significance to, especially emotional significance. So you may not remember what happened 3 weeks ago at 5 p.m. unless you were maybe with your sweetheart and he or she said, will you marry me? This is a diamond ring, and opened a bottle of champagne. Then you'll remember, right? So memory is very fickle. Okay, it's not who we are. Expands our awareness of what is. Okay, and so through the Google network, which is the biggest search engine, we expand our awareness. But there's another thing that people don't understand. Our state of awareness actually chooses the information that we seek out. Okay? So if my state of awareness says, I want to understand the causes of war, terrorism, global warming, social injustice, economic injustice, all the things that are kind of surfacing now as what's happening in Syria and all the Middle East, the so-called Arab Spring, Occupy Wall Street, then my state of awareness, looking at this global picture, will seek out the right information. The information expands awareness, but the state of awareness also expands the information we seek.
Sure.
And if by awareness I mean spirituality, which is my definition, then awareness has many more components than information. Awareness influences your moods. So, if you're depressed, then everything looks dark and bleak. It influences your beliefs. It influences your assumptions. It influences your perceptions. It influences your expectations.
Karma is the seed of memory, which is called sanskara. And the seed of memory, sanskara, creates vasanas, which are subtle desires which take our soul through a cosmic journey until enlightenment. So I'm going to cover that, and even though time is a construct, we'll try and finish it in 1 hour. Okay, so your body is a process. It's a process you cannot identify with your body or your mind, because they're both processes, or with the perceptual experience of the world. At a more fundamental level, it is energy and information. Your gene expression is influenced by your thoughts, emotions, relationships, social interactions, environment, which is the whole science of epigenetics, which is overtaking genetics. You can change the neural networks of your brain to optimize physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. It's the new science of neuroplasticity. So when people hear about this, they say, then we have no free will. That's not true. The past created the situations, circumstances, events of this, what is happening now. Okay. But what you do right now is up to you. So is there free will? Or is the universe determined and it's simultaneously both? If you're asleep, then there's no free will. And if you're awake, then there's infinite free will. Okay, it's all up to how aware we are. But expanding our awareness allows us to actually reinvent the experience that we call the body. What does change your relationship to time means? It means to be present. That's all. So as you're listening to me right now, just be aware of that which is listening.
So in the book, my thesis is that all problems exist because of what I call contracted awareness. Okay, contracted awareness means you feel separate from the ecosystem. The Google network is an ecosystem. So you feel separate from the ecosystem that nurtures the web of relationships. And that then, of course, results in fear, in anxiety, in expectations that are doomsday prophecies, in assumptions that everything is going to go wrong, and so on and so forth. So in my mind, the analogy is you're walking in a dark room and you have a candle, that's the light of your awareness, and you keep bumping into stuff. And so everything is a problem. And that's your world. But now imagine that you can expand that candle's light of awareness. So now you have a flashlight and you can move around, and everything that seemed like an obstacle actually has a purpose. This has a purpose, this has a purpose. That screen has a purpose. So all problems are now opportunities for some purpose. So that's expanded awareness. You now feel connected to the web of relationship. You suffer because you don't know who you are. You confuse yourself with your body-mind experience. Number two, you grasp and cling at experiences which are evanescent and transitory and dreamlike. You say, what happened to your childhood? It's over. What happened to yesterday? It's over. What happened to 5 minutes ago? It's over. What happens to these words? By the time you hear them, they don't exist. So, Wittgenstein, the German philosopher, said, we are asleep. Our life is a dream, but once in a while we wake up enough to know that we are dreaming. So what do you wake up to? When you cross this threshold, you wake up back to your true self, which is not body or mind, but the awareness in which that experience is happening.
True success comes from self-power. I'll repeat that. True success comes from self-power. True success is defined as the progressive realization of worthy goals, the ability to love and have compassion, and to be in touch with the creative power inside you, the ultimate and supreme genius that mirrors the wisdom of the universe. And self-power is true self-esteem. Self-power is not agency power. Agency power is outside power that comes from a title, from a bank account or money, from contacts, or what you might say, your network of connections. Agency power is weak because it only lasts as long as the agency lasts.
Which is listening is a presence that is not in time. It's the same presence that was when you were a baby. Same presence when you were a teenager, now, tomorrow, everything. Experience will keep transforming, but the presence in which the experience is happening is always the same. So the ultimate goal of what is called enlightenment is called self-realization. Not even self-awareness, self-realization, which means you realize who you are. Okay? You're not the experience, you're that in which experience arises and subsides in every now. We can't even say moment of now, because the moment is over as soon as it arises. In every now. Now is the ticket to timeless being, which means eternity. In that sense, I is immortal. Okay? Not I stretching for endless time, but I which is not in time altogether. Okay, so I is immortal.
So I used to stop every once in a while during the day and ask myself, am I aware? And then I would ask myself, what am I aware of? And then I would realize that at the end of this question, all I was aware of sensations, perceptions, images, feelings, and thoughts. That's it. That's the totality of all experience. Sensations in your body, the 5 perceptions, sound, touch, sight, taste, and smell, and color and shape. Images in the mind, imagination. Feelings, emotions, and thoughts. Now, if you want an acronym for this, it is SIFT, SIFT. That's the totality of all experience. The rest is a story. It could be a religious story, a theology, a philosophy, a doctrine, a dogma, or scientific story, but it's still a story. If you want to wake up, recognize, what's my story right now? Are there other versions of this story? And you realize there are infinite versions of every story, every thought, every feeling, every emotion, every perception. If I asked you, what's that? You might say it's a rainbow. And another person said, that's love, that's wonder, that's exhilaration. Or somebody might say it's just water vapor. True power comes from self-esteem, the core of your being. It has the following characteristics. When you have true power, you're independent of the good and bad opinions of the world. You're immune to criticism and flattery, but responsive to feedback. You're fearless. You feel beneath no one, but also superior to no one. And when you come from the core of that being and you ask yourself, how can I help? Then you have true power.
Karma is the conditioned mind through which the movie is being projected. So your present life is a movie, and there are many characters in it. There's that which you call me, and that which you call everybody else, okay, which are all part of the movie. Just like last night, if you had a dream, you were there in the dream and there were other people in the dream, right? And there was a location. I had a dream that I was with Clint Eastwood, we were playing golf in Pebble Beach, and we won the trophy, and this morning I said, oh, it was all happening in I, and it's gone. But this is also happening in I, and it'll be gone. That's why this is a more convincing hallucination. Okay? And we call it everyday reality. Now, of course, for some people, the hallucination causes a lot of suffering. Okay? Child abuse, war, pestilence, starvation, violence. And for some people, the dream is a nightmare.
I am a separate entity as a human body-mind from everything else. So I'm here and then everything else is out there. There are people, there are situations, there are others, there are animals, there are plants, but I'm separate. I'm the perceiver and that is the perceived. I'm the observer and that is the observed. This is our common experience because as soon as you're born, you're given a name. You say, this is your name, this is your ancestry, this is your culture, this is your family, this is your economic status, and that becomes your identity. Never mind that your body and mind are changing, but that's now your identity. And it's a provisional identity as a separate self. And what do we call it? Me. And what do we call the other? The outside, whatever is outside of me, we call the other. So right now, this is me, you are the other. But this me can only exist in relationship to the other. If there is no other, actually there is no me.
Take somebody to this place of awareness till they have evolved to a certain extent, fulfilling more fundamental needs like survival of the body-mind, safety, for a lot of people, money and achievement and goals. For a lot of people still struggling with relationships and love. And then once those needs are met, then slowly the awakening, creative expression, and then the awakening intuition, and then the awakening higher consciousness, and ultimately the awakening that we call God or Spirit or Self. It's all the same thing, self-realization, because the self of the individual is the self of the universe. By the self of the individual, we don't mean body-mind, okay? Body-mind is just a transient experience. There's no, actually in the deeper reality, there's no body, there's no mind, and there's no universe. There's only you.
So your body is dynamic, it's in exchange with all the elements and forces of the universe, and this happens through eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, elimination, how we experience the world through our five senses, sound, touch, sight, taste, smell. That's where Ayurveda comes in, because we use these modalities to change biological expression. But then there's a whole realm of experience which is subjective, which is trans-empirical, which means it's not experience through the senses. Empiricism means experience through the senses and measurable. But there's a whole realm of experience that is subjective. Okay, our thoughts, our feelings, our desires, our imagination, insight, intuition, creativity, all of that, the deepest level of subjectivity for which science, by the way, has no explanation, how the brain produces subjective experience. We call that the heart problem in science. But you close your eyes and you suddenly become aware of all this thing that's happening in your subjectivity, and that influences everything that's happening in the body.
Now remember that your brain is not who you are. Your brain is an instrument that you use to experience this. This means all this and this as well. But the brain itself is also an experience. How do you know that you have a brain? Well, people have seen brains on dissection tables and CAT scans and so on. But even the neural correlates of higher consciousness are neural correlates, they're not who you are.